Where were you when Pearl Harbor was attacked?
I was walking down the main street in front of the picture show
What city?
in Borger.
What was your reaction?
Well, just like everybody, I was just kind of stunned at it.
What were you doing at the time? Were you working or?
I was between jobs at the time. I hadn't gone back to work from coming back to a trip out to California. And
So when did you decide to join the military? Were you drafted or did you enlist?
no, I decided to join it when I was 20 years old. I hadn't been drafted yet, and my number was way down the line. And I just happened to meet a boy on the street that I went to school with, and the Air Force was giving the examinations for training, cadet training applicants, and he was going to go train and go put in for it. So I decided to go with him, but he went to get into the flying part of it. But I really originally went to just get into the work part of it, the mechanics division of it. But after I took that first test, or went to take the first test, and I changed my mind and decided I'd go fly.
What year was this?
This was in 42, was in March of 42. But I just been 20 and I had to get my dad's signature to get in it. Well, he told me he would sign it, and then after I failed the test by 1 point, the mental test by 1 point. And after I'd passed the physical, and then they had to wait 3 months before you could try again. But before three months was up, why, they said you could try every 30 days. So I tried to get him to sign it again, and he wouldn't sign it again. So then I had to wait till I was 21 years old. And I was 21 years old the 20th of June. And the 30th of June, the 29th of June, me and two of my sisters went with me. We had to drive to Lubbock to take it this time. And I drove down to Lubbock and spent the night in the car, and took the test the next day, and there was 15 others with me taking it. 3 of us had finished high school, and 2 of us had finished high school. One had got to the 10th grade, and one had just was a freshman. And all the rest of them were from the college there, Tech.
Yes.
And we went in there and took this test. You had a time limit on it, you know. And the woman sat at the front with a sheet, and she just graded your papers right up there. And we all knew where these college boys were sitting. About 3 of them went up there, and we watched them. And after she graded, she shook her head no to them. She didn't say anything out loud to them, but we knew they hadn't passed it. I was sitting there, and I thought, well, golly, if these college kids can't pass it. I knew that there was a lot of stuff I didn't know in it, but the catch was that if you admitted not knowing something, every 3 times you done that, you got a point, see? So when it come to the vocabulary words, they'd use so many big words I didn't even have any idea what they was. And I skipped every one I didn't really know. And when I went up to have it graded, she said, well, you passed it. So I went down and took the physical. They swapped them around. You took physical first time, and then you had to take the mental afterward. They swapped it around because so many mentals were passing, it wasn't passing the physicals. And I got down there, and the captain was standing there talking to me after I took the physical. The major come in. He said, well, how many did we get out of this, Mike? He said, this one. Said 2 others passed high enough to get into the glider corps, but they didn't want it. And see, that was the 30th, last day of June. Well, if I'd went home that night, I'd had just turn around and come back the next day, the July the 1st, to being sworn in. So the captain asked the major, he said, can we swear him in now? I said, he lives in Borger and he's got to go home tonight. And he just have to turn around and come back tomorrow. And the major said, well, I don't know of anything that says we can't. So they swore me in. And I got home. My draft notice was in the box the next day. And they put up an argument with me and said, if you took that test yesterday, you ain't in the Air Force. I said, I think you better write down there and call them and see, because I think they swore me in.
Wow. So then you started your
So
training?
they put that off till Thursday before they called me. They said, well, you're in the Air Force. You don't have to go to Oklahoma City then, see, to be drafted.
Interesting.
Said, you don't have to go to Oklahoma City. You're in the Air Force. And it was December the 7th before they called me, before they had room enough to take me to train.
Okay. And could you describe the training that you went through?
Oh, yes. We went through the classification there at Santa Ana, and we studied almost everything was. We learned Morse code. We learned all about the engines of the aircrafts, and took weather information lessons and everything like that. Just everything about what might be involved with flying, map reading and such. And when we graduated from there, I went to King City, California for primary. In primary, there we trained in the PT-13s as a primary trainer. And I completed that course there, and then they sent us to Lemoore, California for basic. We flew B-13s there, basic trainers 13. And I completed that, and so they sent me then to Marfa, Texas for advanced training. We flew AT-17s there. And I completed that course and got my commission October the 1st, 1942. 1943 it was.
And so when did you start flying?
Well, when I got my commission, then we had to pick what we wanted to fly. And they told us they didn't need any fighter pilots. If you picked the fighter pilots, you'd probably just be sent to somewhere to go as a co-pilot on a multi-engine. So I chose B-17s as my first choice, and P-51s as second as a fighter. And I got the B-17s and went to Roswell, New Mexico, and trained there in the B-17s till I completed that course and was sent to Alexandria, Louisiana for phase training. But before I went to Alexandria, I had to go to Salt Lake City and pick up crew for B-17s. I got up there and got my crew assigned to me, and we took a train back to Alexandria, Louisiana.
Was this the same crew you used when you made
Same crew, yeah, all except for one man. No, there was 2 men changes. My top turret man cut a leader in his hand here and had to have surgery on it, and he put the surgery off till the day week we were supposed to be shipped overseas, and then he went to the hospital. And I got a substitute for him. And I moved my then tail gunner up to the top turret and put the new man in the tail gunner position. And we left there for Kearney, Nebraska by train. We went up there to pick up an airplane to fly overseas, pick up a B-17 to fly overseas. And they loaded them B-17s with all the spare parts for B-17s that the plane would carry. And we took off from Kearney, Nebraska, and went to Grenier, Maine. And from Grenier, Maine, after about 3 or 4 days there, we got to fly on up to Goose Bay, Labrador. And from Goose Bay, Labrador, we went to Reykjavik, Iceland, And from Axon we flew to Lockerbie, Scotland.
Could you explain what it was like flying a B-17? What was your impression of that aircraft?
Well, it was a good airplane. It was a solid airplane. They got more records of it coming back on 2 and 3 engines than any 4-engine plane they got.
So when you arrived in Scotland, what was that the base that you were to fly out of?
No, that was where they took our plane away from us, and broke it down for parts. So we, and then they sent us on into England for a orientation depot where we spent about a week, and they give us schooling on all this and that, and the stuff you were supposed to do and wasn't supposed to do in England. Mm-hmm. And then we went to our base, and we went to Ipswich, was where I was stationed.
What were the conditions like when you arrived? What were the living conditions like on the base?
On the base, well, the living conditions in England were good. That's the reason I got in the Air Force, because if you got home, you had a good bed to sleep in.
Good point. So,
but I didn't get home one trip. That's the only fault about it.
When did you fly your first mission?
When did I?
Mm-hmm.
I've got them listed here. Gearld probably knows where they are more than I do. There they are.
Okay.
The first mission I flew was the 28th of May in '44.
Do you remember it?
Went to oh yes.
Could you describe it?
Well, yes. They had a habit of sending a first pilot on a mission with a veteran crew, and he flew co-pilot for that pilot. So, and all he had to do was sit there and listen to the fighter channel and watch what was going on, alert them for fighters and stuff. And it just looked like a circus to me from that position, because all that black stuff bursting out there, it looked like it's so far off from us that they wasn't very good shots. But I didn't realize that there was about 100 pieces in the air that was just like a bullet. We got home, had 17 holes in us. The only thing is they didn't hit no vital places. So that kind of woke me up the fact that I wasn't as safe as I thought I was.
So could you kind of run down your experiences on your various missions as you went through World War II?
Well, the second mission I went on was to Leipzig. Now that was a pretty rough mission. They had lots of flak there. And the next was St. Paul in France on the coast. And then I went to Hamburg, Germany. It was another rough mission. And went to Boulogne and Conches. And then June the 6th, I flew 2 missions, June the 6th. Went one Caen, France, and one at Argentine. Now those were you just flew across the channel, and you target and hit it and run back to England, see. So they weren't much to them. And Florinez and Hanover was a rough one. I lost 2 engines, one on a plane 2 different times, but I got back home with it because of the 17 would fly with the 3 engines if you could just trim it up so it would stay in the air. And then the last one was Berlin, and they sent 1,350 airplanes to Berlin that day after Hitler got on the radio and said we were so busy on the Normandy front that they let Berlin alone. So they showed them they wasn't so busy on the front. But they lost 54 airplanes that I know of, because there was that many counted for in the prison I was in Germany, in Berlin.
Could you describe what happened that mission?
Well, it was pretty uneventful until we got the bomb run, because we flew up the coast, see, around and come in the wind was supposed to have been from the west. It was from the west that day. And you had to go around on east. You had to go around on the east side so you come with a tailwind, see? That, whatever the wind was, that increased your ground speed that much and made it that much harder for them to get your altitude and speed. And then, but then they didn't have the PFF stuff that done their sighting for them. They just had to get what they call an altitude of a formation and then box it in with everybody shoot at a different corner. And they always picked on the low squadron, and I happened to be in the low group. And when we come to this big black square box of black smoke in the air, why the lead pilot went around to the right, and my flying number 2 position. They only sent 2. They got to where they only sent 2 bomb sites in a group of 18 planes because they were losing too many bomb sites. And so they give the lead plane and then the number 2 plane a bomb site. And if he got shot out, I was to take the lead, see. And he went around that right side of that flak, and in the next box of flak we ran into, he went around the left side. Well, that throwed me right through it. And a shell must have exploded just under my wing because it kind of flipped the airplane. And the ball turret guy called up and said there was a fire. And the fire was in the supercharger where it runs red hot and that gasoline had run down in it. And we were lucky in a way that they burst the tank and the gas run out, or it might have exploded on us before it did. And I told him to come on up then. I kept trying to control it, but I couldn't control it. They damaged some of the controls. And I put it on automatic pilot, and whatever maneuver it went in, it nearly blacked me out, and I just barely got the automatic pilot cut off. And it was just soaring then, just kind of on a downhill grade, you know. And so I told them all to get out. I could see the gasoline coming out of the flaps on the wing. I stood up. I had to stand up to do it. And when I did, I must have put the oxygen hose loose because I don't even remember. I remember telling them all to leave the plane that I was going. And I remember getting down the catwalk and seeing that everybody in the front was gone. But I don't ever remember, I seen the hole with the door off, but I don't ever remember getting out of it. And when I come to, I was floating on my back. And you'd always, you got these speeches they make to you about everything, but the only trouble with them is the time you think of what you're supposed to do, you should have already had it done. So they said if you want to change positions, why just stick out an arm or a leg or something, you'll change position. So I stuck an arm out, and it just felt like feet had went toward where I never did see the ground. Just went in a spiral like that. So oh shoot, and I just reached over and got, see, you're supposed to get to turning backwards, somersault forward, and when you go down with your head and your feet come over, you're supposed to pull that ripcord and you'll just swing into it. It won't cut you in the legs. And I just reached over and pulled it. I don't even remember the ripcord, the chute opening. I just pulled it, and I was swinging there and that chute falling. I looked at my watch, and then I looked again after I got on the ground, and it took me about 8.5 minutes to get to the ground from where my chute come open. And when I got close to the ground, why, it looked like that chute was swinging like that, see? That chute was doing that, but it wasn't the chute, it was me on the bottom, and I got sick. That's the only time I was ever airsick, was when I was in that chute. And to stop that chute from doing that, when it swings this way, you reach up and pull this line, see? So that pulls you back, kind of. And when you swing that way, you reach up and pull the other line. Finally, you'll quit swinging. Well, about the time I got swinging, the next thing was to face the way you was drifting, you know, wind to your back. Well, by the time I got that straightened out and realized what way I was drifting, well, just to change that, you're supposed to reach up and get a hold of shroud lines and pull them, and that spins you a half turn, see. Well, I just got a hold of the shroud line when my feet hit the ground, then I sat down and my head popped back on the ground, knocked me out. They had all my clothes off of me, but my pants and my underpants. Had my shoes, socks, coat, and shirt off. And when I come to, that guy said, "Haben Sie a Pistole?" "Haben Sie Pistole?" That's what he said. I said, "No, I don't have a pistol." I didn't know German, but they told us that's what that meant.
Was it a German military?
A captain in the German Air Force, he was. And I told him I didn't have a gun, and he said it in a real gruff German voice, you know. I said, "Well, you done took all my clothes off me. Did you find a gun?" Well, that shut him up. And so he had a motorcycle there with a sidecar. No, he didn't. That picked that up later. And so he said, "Well, get up. We're going to take you down the street here." Well, the crowd began to gather, you know. And so I started off down the street with him, and pretty soon I heard some noise back there, and I glanced over my shoulder and I saw a kid coming down on a bicycle through the crowd, and I didn't think nothing of it, so I turned around and was still walking, and the crowd opened up and he ran into me, behind me, and knocked me down. And when I got up, why, the officer made him get his bicycle out of the way, and so we got a little further, and I heard somebody running down the street, and I glanced over my shoulder, and it was a soldier with a gun on his back. It looked like one of the World War I French rifles he had on his back. And so I just turned around and went on walking, and his foot stepped on my calf and my leg, and his left hand got my shoulder, and he hit me right behind the ear with his fist. And when he did, well, it made me fall forward, and it just threw him over me, see, by his hold on my shoulder. And he got up and he put a bullet in his gun and pointed it at me, and then he uncocked it and grabbed it by the barrel and was going to hit me with a stock. And when he did, well, I grabbed a hold of the stock of it. And when I got a hold of the stock of the gun, well, this officer made him stop. And then the officer took his turn. Every time he wanted me to turn and go some way, well, he'd poke me on the shoulder. He was on my right side, and he'd poke me on the shoulder if you want me to go that way, see. And next time we come to the corner, I was just watching him out of the corner of my eye. He ran back to hit me, and I just rolled my shoulder out of his way, and he fell across in front of me. I said, "Now, if you want me to go right or left here, you just tell me which way." So he did from then on. And we got on down there, and they put me in this, looked like a animal cage, looked like really a hen house they'd turned into an animal cage. It had a little old bunch of straw in there, and I don't know how long it had been there, or it didn't look too fresh anyway. And they put me in there and went off and left me, and I had almond joy in my kit, and about 3 o'clock he come down there and brought me that half of that almond joy. I don't know where the other half went. Some germinated.
Probably.
but he brought that to me, and I ate it, and I was asleep when he got out there. I just crawled up. I was so tired, I just crawled up on that hay and went to sleep. And when he come back, why, he took me up there where he was at. By this time, they brought my radio operator and my ball turret man there, and they took me upstairs to where this major and captain were interrogating them. They had all my stuff on their desk. They was both over behind it, and they had my New Testament I kept in my shirt pocket, out looking through it, talking to each other in German and laughing. And I don't have any idea what they're doing, but I think they're making fun of me and my New Testament. So when we got through, they took us downstairs, and my ball turret man had small feet, wore a 6 shoe, and he couldn't get not. He was too crowded in his ball turret with both shoes and the weather shoes on, so he just used his boots, you know, his flight boots. And when his chute popped, he yanked one of his shoes off, and he's running around there with one left foot the shoe and he's barefoot in the other one. And they took both of my flight boots away from me because I had shoes under them. And I went trying to argue him out of one of them shoes for him to wear. Finally, I got him to go get one, and actually they went in there and got the left one. So it took another 10 minutes to get him to go back and get the right one. And they loaded us in a pickup and took off down the highway with us. And it was in June and hot, you know. Had this tarp over it, and the tailgate tarp fell down to cover the back. And they had a spare tire set laying in the bed there, and I was sitting on the spare tire, and the two boys were sitting beside them. And we was going down this highway, and every time I started to do something that might have got me hurt, there was some reason I had to quit. These two guys stood up, and they was rolling that tailgate thing up, and I'd got a hold of the brace up here and was going to push him out the back so we could get away. And we come in a 10-foot high fence. Boy, I shut her down right there because I knew that it was a guard gate, you know. So we made it to the prison.
Do you know which one?
In Berlin.
Berlin, okay.
Yeah, at the Air Embassy building.
What were the living conditions like there?
What were the weather?
What was the living conditions
Oh,
like in a prison?
Well, now this was just the jailhouse in Berlin. We hadn't got to our prison camp yet. This was the interrogation area, and they had everybody that they picked up on that raid in there and was trying to find out all this information from them. And they had interrogated me and wanted to know when they got past my name, rank, and serial number. Why, I'd either say I don't know or give them my name, rank, and serial number. And they said, well, if you don't know, they asked me who my commanding officer was. I said, I don't know. And they said, well, if you don't know, we'll just show you. They had a book about that thick and about that wide, about that long. And they flipped over there and it said right at the top, 447th Bomb Group. And it had the commanding officer and all the officers, all the staff officers and everything, you know. Then it had the crews, the B-17 crews. My name was listed there with all my crews. They told me what mission I was on. And they had any two of us. If any two of us had flown the same number of missions, it was me and the navigator, and I was with him all the time. I know he didn't tell them. And they knew how many missions I had flown. They knew what day I got in England, what base I was at.
Wow.
They really had us. But all they wanted was confirmation of the information they had, see? And we heard one guy, they just talked him out of everything he knew. We was close enough to their interrogation desk, we could hear them.
Did they, what sort of methods they use for interrogation?
Just had a form there and went through it and asked you all these questions about just what I told you about.
Okay.
The mission, what mission you on, who your officers were. And,
so there's no physical abuse for that interrogation room?
well, not there wasn't. Now my navigator and bombardier had gotten abuse when they got picked up. They called him a bombardier to nearly bite his tongue in two. He was so sore he couldn't eat for 3 or 4 days.
So after the interrogation in the jail in Berlin, when were you transferred to a Stalag, a prisoner of war
Well,
camp?
we went from there, they come plumb back across Germany to their interrogation center, which was down close to Hamburg. And we went into a camp there, and we spent about 5 days there, and they give us a Red Cross parcel there. And I met all the crew. All the crew was there except the bombardier. I never seen the bombardier after we got separated from in Berlin.
What kind of emotions were you feeling? I mean, here you are an American fighting a war in Europe out of England, and probably the only thing about the Germans was through propaganda and what you've read. What was it like being in their country as a prisoner? How'd you feel?
Well, I felt lost.
Yeah.
But you know, in all that time, I never felt like I was going to lose my life for some reason or another. I don't know why. But I knew there was danger, and I went through 42 months of training and combat and stuff, and I never saw a dead person while I was in the service. Not one. I didn't even see any along the road when they were marching us. Just, I seen things happen that I know took lives, but they was all cleaned up by the time I got to where the accident was, and everybody was moved.
Could you explain what life was like in a prisoner of war camp?
Well, as an officer, it was, the only thing rough about it was the diet and the bed conditions and stuff like that, and the fact that you couldn't go nowhere but around the fence. But
What was wrong with the diet? Was the food?
with the diet, well, I lost from 189 to 142. That'll tell you something.
Yeah.
It wasn't, most of everything we got was either soup of some kind, barley or potato soup or something like that, and black bread. And the black bread we got was molded. We had to spend some of our camp money. See, they gave so many right marks to the commanding officer to spend for stuff for us that we couldn't buy clothes or food or medicine or anything like that, but we could buy books and stuff like that. And they bought a hand slicing machine, and we'd have to put that loaf of bread in there and slice that mold off on all 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, all 6 sides before you have bread to eat out of it. And the potatoes they brought us, first day I went in there, they dumped a wagon load of potatoes out in the grounds between the cookhouse and the fire pond, and the mess hall enlisted men went out there and got all the good potatoes out of it. And then when I come in, these prisoners that had been there a while were out there. They'd pick up a potato that didn't have a piece of good on it that big around, and they'd cut that off and keep it. And drove it rotten down. I thought, boy, I sure would hate to have to be out there. But next time they dumped a load, I was out there getting my share of them.
Could you explain some of the experiences and some of the memories of being a prisoner of war during this time?
Well, I remember that to escape from prison, you had to go through your commanding officer and give him a plan and everything, you know. And there was one Polish boy and an Englishman. They happened to have one Englishman and a Polish boy in our camp. Most all the rest of them were Americans. And this Polish boy had got out about 3 times. And I remember the time he tried, when I got in there, the light pole inside of the house was higher than the service pole on the outside. And that made it run downhill, see. And he come up with the idea that he could get up there and snap a snap over that and have a harness on, he'd slide over the fence. Well, he finally got permission from the commanding officer to do it, try it. Well, the only thing out of it, that copper wire stretched so that he didn't go down to the other pole. It just sagged till he got so low he couldn't slide uphill. There he was, stuck out there, and of course the alarm went off, you know, and everything. But he got down and got back in the barracks before they caught him. So they didn't know who it was that tried it. But he got out about 3 times, and once he got clear to the Swiss border. And he just sat down and put his shoes off to swim across that river to Switzerland. And the guard walked right up on him, brought him all the way back to Saigon. And he was just lucky he didn't get in the hands of an SS trooper, because they'd have killed him being out there without a dog tag, seeing. And